Hello friends, today we are going to study the lifespan psychology. In lifespan psychology, we are going to study various stages of human life. The life of the human begins at the point of conception, and from there the prenatal period, that is before birth period, begins, which is a 9 months pregnancy period. Then comes the neonatal stage, that is known as during birth time, and then after the birth there is a various stages known as postnatal period. In postnatal period there are different stages of human life, that is babyhood period, then comes the childhood period, then adolescence period, then adulthood and old age. Let us understand the various concepts of lifespan psychology. Concept of development refers to the progressive series of changes that occur due to the maturation and experience. How the development occurs due to maturation? Maturation means the qualities or attributes or inherited traits gets unfolded. It is a sequence of behavior. And experience means we do it with the exercise or training. Training is provided by the parents, by the teachers, and if training is not provided, then development may retard. For example, about the child's writing, swimming activities or drawing activities, etc. Development is a qualitative aspect. It is also a complex process. It starts from the birth and it ends till death. Development also follows a definite and predictable pattern. Development is in the sense of physical as well as psychological. So, physical development and motor development gives the child independency. It also starts from the head till foot and from trunk to the extremities. For example, child first crawls, then creeps and then walks. Rate of development for every person, every child is different. It varies from individual to individual. Every developmental period has certain characteristics which we are going to study, and also every development has hazards. Every stage of human being has hazards. We are going to study that also. Development is affected by the environmental factors, like for example attitude of the significant people, especially the attitude of parents towards the child, attitude of the grandparents towards the child. Secondly, development affects by the cultural standards. Also, it is affected by third factor, that is known as social expectations. Society has certain rules. Society has certain expectations. Family rules are there that also affects on the child's development. And lastly, traditional beliefs. Traditional beliefs also affects on the human development. Basically, we are going to study the biological, physical, motor, psychological and cognitive, social and emotional, and gender identity. Let us understand now what is the difference between development and growth. Development is a qualitative aspect, whereas the growth is quantitative aspect. Development cannot be measured, whereas growth can be measured. Development, for example, cognitive development, speech development, skill development, speaking, learning, these are all developments which is a qualitative aspect. Whereas growth, which is a quantitative aspect, we can measure it, like for example height of the child, weight of the child, size of the child, structure of the child or shape of the child. Growth and development, both they go hand in hand. They are interdependent on each other. There are certain characteristics of development. Each phase has some characteristics. Characteristics behaviors are there. Then there are some hazards. Then there are some aided by stimulation. There are certain cultural changes and social expectations. We also have to study the methods of studying development. There are totally 6 methods of studying development. First method is known as cross-cultural method, where we do the comparison of made by between the behavior and attitude of 2 or more different groups of children or different ages of children. That is known as cross-cultural study. Second is longitudinal study. In longitudinal study, we study the same child at different ages. For example, if I am studying one child at the age of 5, the same child I will study again at the age of 8. Again, I will study the same child at the age of 12. That is called longitudinal study, studying the same child in different age intervals. Third is case study. We take a specific child with a specific problem and go into the detail, that is known as case study. Fourth is observational study. We observe many things around us and we can do the observation of a children and write certain things. Fifth method of studying the development is known as sequential method. Sequential method is a combination of cross-cultural study as well as the longitudinal study. And last one is time lag method, which studies the effect of historical event on the behavior of the child. Let us come to the point of obstacles which are in studying the lifespan development. First obstacle what we have is representative sample. We may be getting the children from the school which is readily available to us, but getting infants is very difficult. Therefore, representative sample is not much available about the infant with us. That becomes an obstacle for us to do the further research work in the lifespan psychology. Secondly, establishing rapport with the subject. We try to establish the rapport with the children or rapport with the adult people, but sometimes it is very difficult to go into the personal details of their behavior, or they fail to report either, or they don't want to report it. Hence, we are not getting enough understanding about the behavioral aspect. Third obstacle what we have is appropriate methodology for different age group. We are having children of different age, but we are not getting appropriate ready methodology with us which can be applied to these people. Or sometimes we have only one child for our studies and that is not enough for us. One more obstacle what we have is accuracy of data. Sometimes inaccurate information which we are getting it while collecting the data gives us a false understanding about the study, and therefore we cannot rely on such studies. And last, ethical aspect. We have to take the consent of the parents while studying their children. We have to take the consent of the guardians while studying children. Sometimes we have to take the consent of adults before we start their studies. These are various obstacles which we have in studying the lifespan developmental psychology. Let us come to the first period of human life that begins at the point of conception. That is called as prenatal period. Prenatal period is 9th month pregnancy period. That is before birth period. This particular period is divided into 3 parts. First is genetic part, secondly environmental influence, and thirdly hazards. We are going to study these 3 things. In genetic again there are 3 points, that is conception, sex of the child and twins. Let us understand conception first. When the conception takes place, that means when the sperm from the male side comes and unites with the ovum of the female side and it fertilizes the egg, the human life begins. That particular point is where the conception has taken place. The first stage is known as zygote, where unfertilized egg is there. And this period ranges from fertilization to 2 weeks. Second stage after this comes is embryonic stage. That stage is from 2 weeks to 2 lunar months. And third stage is fetus stage, that is from 2 lunar months till the birth. In hereditary, in genetics, male and female, they have 23 pairs of chromosomes. These 23 pairs of chromosomes are passed on to the next generation. Out of that, 22 chromosomes are autosomes and one chromosome is known as sex chromosome. Chromosomes carry genes and genes are real carriers of heredity. They carry all internal traits of both the parents, and some of the chromosomes are dominant chromosomes and some are the recessive chromosomes. Recessive chromosomes, they do not show effect on the human being, in the child or the next generation. Whereas dominant chromosomes or dominant genes, they show the effect. The dominant genes which shows the effect, they are seen or observed by the people. Recessive genes are carried by the next generation to the next generation. Maybe that recessive gene may become dominant in the third generation and show its effect on the third generation. And that's why sometimes third generation do not look like parents but look like a grandparents. That is because recessive gene has become dominant gene in the next generation. Let us come to the next point, that is the 23rd chromosome, which carries the sex chromosome that decides the sex of the child. When the woman is having only XX chromosomes with them, whereas men, they have X and Y chromosome. When the X chromosome from the male side comes and unites with the X chromosome of female side, we get a baby girl with XX combination. Whereas when the Y chromosome from the male side comes and unites with the X chromosome of female side, it is XY combination that results into the boy. The sex of the child cannot be changed. The sex of the child has lifelong influence on his behavior because societal expectation, cultural pressure keeps coming on the baby because of his sex. That means, for example, boys are treated in a different way, girls are treated in a different way. That is only because they are girls, only because of boys. So that lifelong effect on their behavior comes because of the sex, which is determined before birth. Next stage is twins. There are two types of twins. One is identical twins and second is fraternal twins. Identical twins are those twins who look same. If one is girl, another has to be a girl. If one is boy, another has to be boy. Because they are coming from the same sperm and same ovum, but it splits into two, and two different multiplication of cells are going on. Therefore, two different individuals are born. That's why they are called identical. They look alike. They have all same hereditary characteristics. That's why they are known as identical twins. There are fraternal twins also. In fraternal twins, two different sperms from the male side gets united with two different ovum in the female and they get fertilized. They are just like brother sister, or they may be sister sister, or they may be brother brother, because they two different sperms are fertilizing two different ovum. Therefore, we are getting two different individuals born at the same time. That's why they are called twins. Let us come to the second aspect, that is environmental influence in prenatal development. What are those factors when the baby is born, then it affects on the child? Mother's diseases, if she is suffering from any severe disease like diabetes, like typhoid, or like jaundice, this may affect on the baby. Secondly, drug and chemicals. If the mother is habituated to drink alcohol, or she is habituated to a drug addiction, then that may have the effect on the baby. Thirdly, radiations. Certain radiations which are necessary for the therapeutic treatment, then that may affect on the fetus. Nextly is abortion. Sometimes abortion takes place maybe because parents don't want, that's why, or sometimes natural abortion takes place, or sometimes it is medically terminated. That also affects on the fetus. Then age of the mother is another factor. Below 18 years of age is not appropriate age for the pregnancy. At the same time, above 35 years of age for the woman is not appropriate for the pregnancy. Then nutrition of the mother, her diet, her food habits will affect on the baby's development. If the mother is taking lot of stress on her during pregnancy, that is also going to affect on the baby. So we have to control all these factors to have a very healthy baby. There are hazards in the prenatal development. And what are those? There are two types of hazard. One is physical hazard and second is psychological hazard. What is physical hazard? Physical hazard is a malnutrition. Again, diet of the mother, diet of the baby, diet of the mother, which is going to affect on the development of the child. Secondly, maternal age. As I told you, the maternal age should not be below 18 years of age, or it should not be above 35 years of age. Sometimes there are multiple births that creates a complication in the development of the baby. Then there are smoking is another aspect of mother which is going to affect on the baby. Drinking is also an aspect which will affect on the baby. These are the hazards in the prenatal period before the child born. What hazards we have? So these are physical hazards the baby will have. There are another hazards that is known as psychological hazards. In psychological hazards, some traditional beliefs are there. For example, some thinking of the which is passed on from generation to generation. We believe in certain aspects that may affect on the child's development. Secondly, maternal stress is a psychological aspect. If mother is going through the stress, maybe due to any reason, and this stress remains for a longer period of time, that is going to affect psychologically on the child's. Then unfavorable attitude of significant people, that is also a psychological aspect. For example, sometimes parents, they don't want the baby and baby is honorable, then that becomes a psychological hazard for the child. Sometimes parents or mother, she doesn't want the baby at this time, that is also another aspect. Sometimes illegitimate child is there, that will cause stress also, and that will create hazard for the baby also. Sometimes parents, they have preference for particular sex of the child, like some parents they want male child, some parents they want female child, that also is going to affect on the baby. Then some people, they are expecting very dream child, sometimes it doesn't happen like this. sometimes people, they mother or parents, they don't want the multiple births, and it is already there, multiple developments are there in the mother's womb. So these are the various reasons are there which are called psychological hazards for the child who is in the prenatal period. After prenatal period, now we will come to the neonatal period. Neonatal period is development during infancy, that is during birth period. This is very shortest period of our full lifespan. It extends from birth to 2 weeks. Radical adjustment has to be made by the child during this period. And while making this adjustment, there is sudden stop in the development. So it is known as plateau in development. What radical changes the child has to make in the infancy period? He has to make adjustment to the temperature. Mother's womb temperature is always constant. When the baby is born, the outside temperature may be below than the mother's womb temperature or may be above than the mother's womb temperature. So temperature changes are there in the environment. So when the baby borns, he has to make adjustment to this new temperature in the environment. Secondly, drastic adjustment he has to make is breathing. When the baby is in the mother's womb, that time he gets oxygen through the umbilical cord. But when the baby is born, doctors cut the umbilical cord, and when they cut, the baby is separated from the mother. And now he has to start breathing on his own. So his first cry is the breathing process. So that is second drastic adjustment he has to make. Third adjustment which he has to make is suckling and swallowing the milk. He has to feed himself. When he was in mother's womb, all the food what mother used to eat is to get it through the umbilical cord. But now as he is separated from the umbilical cord, he has to make the efforts to feed himself. And that is what he has to suckle and he has to swallow the food. That drastic change he has to make it. And last, elimination. He has to eliminate stool, he has to eliminate urine. This is another change which he has to get adapted to. Infancy is the period of future predictions also. We can sometimes predict what this child is going to become by observing the baby. There are hazards in this period also. There are two types of hazard. One, physical environment, that is physical hazard which is caused because of the new environment. Mother's womb is one of the environment, but now he has come out. So new environment, new atmosphere, new surrounding, he has to make adjustment to that. That becomes a hazard in his development. Second hazard is psychological hazard, that is attitude of the significant people around him, and that is parents, grandparents and siblings. If they are there, then their attitudes affects on the baby's development. In infancy period, there are basically 5 types of development takes place. First is physical, second is psychological, third is cognitive, fourth is linguistic, and fifth is social development. Let us go one by one. Let us first understand what is physical development. Physical development means the child's size and growth depends on the physical environment. What type of an environment the child is receiving or getting, that according to that the development will take place. Infantile features are seen in the newly born baby, like his muscles are very soft, his muscles are very weak, and they are very small, and they are uncontrollable muscles. Secondly, newborn baby out of 24 hours, nearly 20 hours he sleeps. But as the days passes, his awakening hours increases and sleeping hours decreases. His physique is also in the proper development. His main task is sleeping, feeding himself, and bowel movement. These are the main physical aspect of development the child is going through during the infancy period. Let us understand what is psychological aspect he is going through. Psychological aspect, according to Erikson, is ego identity crisis, that is trust versus mistrust. Child learns to trust and or child learns to mistrust depending on the people around him, specifically mother, how she behaves with the baby. That is a psychological aspect. Second is traditional beliefs, what we have, that is also going to affect on the infant development. Sometimes parents, they decide the best time to born. So some parents, they have a planned delivery. Planned delivery according to the months, because some months are good, some months are bad. That is again our beliefs are there, that is associated with the baby's birth. Dates are also associated with the baby's birth. Sometimes zodiac signs are also associated with the baby's. Baby, newly born baby is very helpless, and therefore they have to depend on their mother. Names of the baby is also one of the psychological hazard. Many people, they tell many names, so which name to be given to the baby, that is another psychological hazard we have. Third development is that cognitive development. A child is developing, learning new things, because now he is born, so he learns and acquires learning, processing and organizing through touch, sound, sight, taste, smell and language. Linguistic development is listening to the ability to communicate. Language spoken by mother, child learns that. If the mother is speaking in English with the baby, the child will learn English. If the mother is speaking some other regional language, then the child will learn or develop the regional language mastery. The child uses his mouth and tongue while learning the language. He also creates his own sounds, and it is sometimes reinforced by the mother. Lastly, social development. Attachment to the mother, because the mother is giving lot of care, love and attention to the child. Smile is very important. The child gives early smile to his mother, that is a muscular smile. But social smile the baby starts giving at the age of 7 to 8 weeks. And then the baby gives, at the age of 3 months, baby gives smile to any face. The more the attachment the baby is having with the mother, the bonding takes place, strong bonding takes place, strong secured attachment takes place. But if the mother is going away and gets separated from the baby, or baby is separated from the mother, then the child may experience anxiety. There are some hazards during the infancy period also. The first hazard is complication during birth. Sometimes it happens that the mother goes through the different type of a delivery, like forceps delivery. In forceps delivery, there are chances that the child may get head injury or brain injury. Sometimes multiple births are there. That can be another problem to the baby and may have the hazard. Sometimes loss of oxygen is there during birth, that can be negatively affected on the child's development. Multiple birth is another reason, another hazard during infancy period, where the babies are very small. Many are there, so they are very small babies, they are very weak babies, so can be the hazard during the infancy period. Some children are post maturing children. That means they are taking more than 9 months pregnancy into the stomach. They are taking more than 9 months. So then the baby's head becomes big and the baby cannot pass through the pelvic bone. That time they may use the forceps. Forceps injury may happen, and that can be the one of the hazard to the newly born baby. Some babies are premature babies. Premature babies means babies which are born before 9 months. Some babies are born at 7 months. They are also very weak. They are also very small babies. That can be also hazard to the during the infancy period. These are all physical hazards. Now let us come to the psychological hazards during infancy period. First one is traditional belief. Some people they think that difficult delivery will have the baby's life difficult throughout the life. This is just a traditional belief. This may not be true. This is not true also. But some people they believe like this. Sometimes some people believe that the baby is crying or born in the night period, so he will keep crying throughout the night. This is also one of the traditional belief. That is a psychological hazard to the baby. Second hazard, psychological, is helplessness. Child, when he comes outside in the world, he is totally helpless. He has to depend on his mother for everything, for feeding, for changing, for comfort, for medicines, for care, for love, for handling, for everything, for physical movements, for turning, etc. For everything, the child is totally dependent on his mother. So his helplessness can be a psychological hazard. Third hazard is attitude of the parents. Specifically, mother's attitude is very, very important towards the baby. That is going to affect on the child. Gender preference is another aspect. If the parents are expecting a baby boy and baby girl is born, or parents are expecting vice versa, baby girl and baby boy is born, then their preference towards the sex of the child can affect on the child's development. Multiple birth is another hazard, psychological hazard is there. Then complication during the birth, that is also another hazard, psychological hazard during the psychological hazard during the infancy. And last, twins. If the two children are taking its birth, that also is a psychological hazard. These are all about the infancy period. So we have studied, our friends, we have studied about the prenatal stage, that is the before birth period. Now we have studied about the neonatal period, that is the infancy period. Now we will come to the childhood period, that is after birth, that is 2 weeks onwards. Till 2 years is early childhood period, and from 2 years to 6 years is early childhood period, and 6 years to 12 years is late childhood period. So before that is a babyhood period. From 2 weeks to 2 years is a babyhood period. After that the childhood period begins. Childhood period is divided into 2 parts, that is early childhood period and late childhood period. During this also we have different developments: physical development, psychological, social, emotional development, cognitive development, and linguistic development. Let us come to the physical development of the child. There are many factors which affect on the physical development of the child. And what are those factors? First is family influence, that is genetic, totally inherited aspects. the child inherits many genetics from his parents and grandparents. So this is going to affect on their physical development. Second point is nutrition. What type of a food the child is getting from his parents? What type of a diet the child is getting from the parents? Healthy diet will have a healthy child, healthy development. Socioeconomic status will also affect on his development. How socioeconomic status will affect on the development? For example, if the child is born in the lower class where the houses are very small, the financial condition is not good to provide them good food, this definitely going to result into the malnutrition. Vice versa, a child is born in the middle class or the upper class. Then health, good health, if the child is having, then he is a healthy baby. If his health is having some issues, then the child will not have the healthiness in him. And lastly, the girls, they develop faster than boys. Girls, they will become sexually 2 years mature earlier than boys. These are the various factors and conditions which affect on the physical development of the child. Second aspect is the development during this period little bit slows down. Height increases at the average annual level, that is 3 inches, and weight increases annually 3 to 5 pounds. Baby looks have disappeared during the childhood period, and now the baby's body builds. These are all physical characteristics and development of the child during childhood period. Now let us come to the psychological, social and emotional development of the child. Child experiences ego identity according to Erikson. Ego identity, where the child feels that I am no more child and I am no more adult also. If somebody treats him like a child, he says, now I am not a child, I have become adult. And if we try to give the responsibility of an adult, he says, no, I am not an adult, I am a child. So he himself is in a different condition, that is called identity crisis. He is having the ego identity, and that is why the child will psychological, social and emotional development gets affected by this. Secondly, he experiences conflict in many aspects, like being a child or not being a child. That is one of the conflict. So psychologically also he is disturbed, and certain thought processes are also disturbing to the child. Next comes is a cognitive aspect, where the child learns about abstract thinking. Till now he did not understand what is abstract thinking, but now he develops the knowledge about the abstract thinking. He also develops the reasoning skills, that is his cognitive development is getting enhanced. Then comes a linguistic aspect. Child has already learned to speak, but what to speak, how to speak, whom to speak, what to speak to whom, all this understanding comes during childhood period. Of course, the training is necessary to the child, so that parents can give the training, teachers can give the training. Some classes are also available outside, that how to speak. Communication skills becomes very important here. The child is already going to the high school, so his vocabulary also increases. He develops communication with his friends, he develops the communication with his parents, with the teacher, etc. These are all levels of developments are taking place during the childhood period. Let us understand what are the characteristics of the childhood period. Some parents, they feel that the childhood period is the period of behavioral problems. They feel that during childhood period, the child becomes stubborn, child is disobedient. Some children, they go away from the parents. This problems even parents feel it. So that is very common problem we have. Secondly, it is known as toy age. Children at early childhood period, they like to play with toys. Toys is their world. Toys is a play activity. They like to be in this world. So they enjoy being in this world. So toy, that's why that is called toy age. And physically and mentally a child becomes independent during the childhood period. Previously he was dependent on the parents, but now he is not much dependent on his parents. He can think on his own, he can decide on his own, and he becomes on his own. There are certain hazards. There also one more characteristic is there, that is the child becomes self-sufficient. That is independent development is there, and he develops his own self-esteem. What is self-esteem, friends? Self-esteem means what you think about yourself, how worth you are in this world. So the child develops self-esteem. Self-esteem can be developed positively, or sometimes it can be developed, it can go, self-esteem can be high, self-esteem can be low. It depends on how parents treat the child. Then at this period, childhood period is a period of social foundation, because socialization is at a maximum level between 2 years to 12 years. It's a longest period in the lifespan of the human being. So during this period, all social developments are taking place. The child is into the school, meeting friends, meeting various teachers, meeting parents, neighbors, etc. So maximum social development is taking place. That's why it is known as period of socialization also. Therefore, it is known as period of social foundation. Then let us come to the hazards during the childhood period. There are again two hazards. That is one, physical hazard. Physical hazards where some children, because of previous conditions which has affected on their development, may face the illnesses during childhood period. Some children, they are not keeping well, on and off they fall ill, and that can be a physical hazard for his development. Second hazard, some accident may take place. The children, they try to climb up, they try to jump from up, they climb on the trees, and some accident takes place. They might have a big fall, climbing up the staircase, climbing down from the staircase. That can also result into the accident, and that can have the physical hazard. And third hazard is obesity, irregular food habits, or the junk food which children eat, that may affect on the physical development of the baby, and that can be a result in a hazard. Second hazard is known as psychological hazard during childhood period. In psychological hazard, there is a communication skills. The child learns to communicate, but they may not have the communication skill, how to communicate the information or thought processes or messages to the friends or to the teacher or to the parents. That may result into the psychological hazard. Secondly, social attitudes. The child develops social attitudes. If social attitudes, they are developed positive, the child will make an adjustment. But if he develops negative social attitudes, that can be a hazard. Then one more hazard is lack of playmates. That is, some children, they keep ourselves very reserved, and they do not get the company of other friends with whom they will play. So lack of playmates can be a psychological hazard. Some children are rejected by other children, maybe because of their illness, maybe because of their lack of skills, and that child feels rejected. Some children are isolated, they sit separately, they are alone, they feel lonely, and that can be a psychological hazard to the child. Then unhealthy attitudes, unhealthy communication skills is also will result in psychological hazard. And play hazard is also there, that the children, some children, they cannot play with others, maybe because of handicaps, maybe because of rejection by the peer friends, or maybe because of they are not accepted in the group. That can be a psychological hazard. So friends, today we have completed 3 stages of human life, that is prenatal stage, neonatal stage, and in postnatal stage we have come till the childhood period. We will continue with the information about the adolescence and adulthood and aging into the next video. So keep tuned. Do not forget to like and subscribe and share my videos with others. I would like to hear your comments. So please do comment in the comment box. Thank you so much.